I'm Megan.
And I'm Laina.
And we're here today to talk about our audit of personally identifiable information. In our audit, we found that U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE, regularly access county data due to code violations by county agencies. We also found that the county lacks a robust privacy program. These conditions increase risk to the privacy of county residents and the county's reputation. This presentation will focus on ICE access to county data and other aspects of the county's privacy program as a whole. I'll start with ICE, then hand it over to my colleague Laina to talk more about the privacy program. ICE could access county data because agencies were not fully compliant with county code. The yellow box at the bottom of the slide shows that Code 2.15 prohibits agencies from aiding in civil immigration enforcement. Recently revised by a 2018 ordinance, this section of code establishes how agencies should serve immigrant communities and share information with ICE. It also defines personal information that should not be shared without a criminal warrant to include people's addresses, phone numbers, and even social media accounts. This is because accurate contact information could make it easier for federal agents to detain or deport county residents. We found that both the jail and sheriff's office shared information with ICE, violating code and people's privacy. Over the course of 1 year, 15 employees of ICE's detention and removal unit logged into a county system more than 1,000 times. The system contains non-public information about people booked into county jails, including their addresses, photos, and physical descriptions. On April 16th, after we informed the jail that ICE was using the system, KCIT deactivated ICE accounts. As shown in the yellow box, Code 2.15 also prohibits agencies from giving ICE access to non-public databases without a criminal warrant. The jail gave ICE and other law enforcement agencies access to the system 10 years ago. This was before the law was in effect. But because the jail did not monitor who was using the system regularly, ICE was able to continue using county data even after the law went into effect. To comply with county code, our audit recommended that the jail regularly monitor access to non-public data systems so it can detect and stop unauthorized use. So in addition to database access, code prohibits agencies from giving ICE personal information without a criminal warrant. Over 17 months, the Sheriff's Office received 25 requests for information from ICE, and in response, the Sheriff sent ICE unredacted case files, which could contain personal information on witnesses and victims as well as suspects. The Sheriff violated code because it didn't ask for a warrant or otherwise verify whether these requests were for criminal or civil enforcement. To comply with code, we recommend that the sheriff work to ensure it does not give federal immigration agents personal information without a warrant. What other problems did we find? Well, the jail followed some, but not all elements of code related to ICE detainers. As you can see in the yellow box, detainers are requests that the jail hold people in custody for ICE. Our county code has 3 requirements for ICE detainers. The first one is that agencies don't honor them. The second is that they notify people when a detainer is issued in their name, and the third is that they give people a copy of their detainers. We found that the jail complied with the first requirement by not honoring detainers. We also found that the jail partially complied with code, as you can see marked here in yellow, by sometimes but not always informing people of detainers. Lastly, we found that the jail violated code, as shown by the red icon, by not giving people copies of their detainers. Without notice or documentation, people may be unaware that they are being pursued by immigration agents, and should they decide to pursue legal aid, would have less information to support their case. So to comply with code, we recommend that the jail provide people with timely notice and copies of ICE detainers. So looking again at this yellow box, county code prohibits the collection of personal information and nationality without a service need or legal requirement. The jail unnecessarily recorded citizenship status and country of birth in violation of code. Jail staff asked for this information without allowing people to opt out, and without explaining why it was collecting the data in the first place. The jail's booking database includes nearly 40,000 people identified as foreign nationals. To comply with code, we recommend that the jail not collect citizenship data. So how did this happen? Part of the reason agencies were not fully compliant with code is that they weren't trained how to comply. Code requires the executive to train agencies, but doesn't specify when to train agencies. The Office of Equity and Social Justice, or OESJ as they're called here at the county, is responsible for this training. And the office had trained staff at the Department of Public Health, but not at the jail or the sheriff's office. When we asked it why it hadn't trained more agencies, staff told us that it prioritized other work, namely language access plans, because these plans had a concrete deadline specified in code. We recommend that OESJ carry out a timely training plan to help agencies implement county code.
So Megan just detailed a case study exploring one of the bad things that can happen when there's no structure in place to integrate privacy into agency operations. I'm going to move on to talk about the big picture, which is framed by the county's lack of a privacy program. As Megan mentioned, County Code 2.15 included a definition of personal information. However, that's not the only place that the county defines terms related to personally identifiable information, or PII. On this slide are 4 terms that look similar, but are each defined independently in code or policy. Some are defined narrowly, like the ones marked here in red, and some broadly, like the ones marked in green. The narrowly defined terms refer only to certain pieces of information, like contact information, social security number, and mother's maiden name, while the broadly defined terms refer to any information that can be linked to an individual, which is in line with national best practice. The National Institute of Standards and Technology uses a broad definition for personal information and lists a range of examples shown here, again including contact information and adding other things like place of birth, which Megan discussed previously. To facilitate broad understanding and application of policies and code regarding privacy, we recommend that KCIT work with stakeholders to develop a single definition of personal information. The county has had a commitment to privacy written into code since 1996. The problem is that no one has taken charge of accountability to that commitment. The primary stakeholders are all focused elsewhere. While KCIT, or the King County Department of Information Technology, has the county's Chief Information Security and Privacy Officer, the agency's focus has historically been more on technical aspects of security and privacy. KCIT is also an internal service provider and as such has not taken a compliance role in overseeing how agencies manage personal information. The Public Records Committee, another stakeholder in privacy, also sees itself in a supporting role, providing input on policies and assisting agencies with records retention planning. County agencies collect and hold personal information in the course of doing business. County Code 2.14 states that the data collector is responsible for protecting personal information, but the lack of a framework to guide how agencies protect personal information leaves it up to each agency's interpretation. The county has a privacy policy, but it was not implemented. The policy identifies the Chief Information Security and Privacy Officer as responsible for guiding the county's privacy program, but such a program does not yet exist. The policy also calls for each agency to have a privacy coordinator to liaise with KCIT, but KCIT managers were unaware of the existence of agency privacy coordinators other than those who deal with protected health information, so this role is largely unfulfilled. The result of this lack of structure and accountability is that the county doesn't know what personal information it holds, which makes it impossible to ensure that all personal information is adequately protected. This, in turn, increases vulnerability to a data breach that could compromise residents' privacy and/or harm the county's reputation and finances. To address these issues, we recommend that KCIT work with stakeholders to implement a county-wide privacy program that delineates roles, responsibilities, and resource needs. Best practice says to take inventory of what personal information we hold so that we can make sure appropriate safeguards are in place. The county doesn't have anything specifically built to do this, but KCIT has a database they use to manage agency software applications that has the ability to track which ones contain personal information. However, only about half of the almost 1,200 applications have been evaluated for the presence of personal information. KCIT managers weren't clear on who is responsible for updating the database. So we recommend that KCIT take inventory of the personal information held by county agencies and develop tools for agencies to identify and appropriately safeguard personal information. Finally, part of managing the risk of holding residents' personal information is ensuring that agencies dispose of records containing personal information after the information is no longer needed. County policies require that records of personal information be securely disposed of once their retention periods have passed. This is important because holding on to personal information longer than necessary prolongs risks associated with a data breach. While the county lacks comprehensive data on compliance with records retention schedules, records management staff told us that most agencies are only partially compliant. One of the reasons for this is that few county databases have the functionality to purge records, suggesting that some agencies are keeping information longer than necessary due to technical constraints. We make recommendations that KCIT ensure that information systems have the capability to purge data, and that KCIT, the Public Records Committee, and the King County Executive collaborate to ensure that agencies purge sensitive personal information according to records retention schedules. In conclusion, we found that agencies violated privacy provisions in King County Code in ways that could negatively affect immigrant communities, and the lack of accountability through a formal privacy program increases risks to residents in the county. Considering that our Office of Risk Management reported that it is very likely for the county to experience a significant electronic security breach within the next 5 years, it's important that agencies take action now to improve consistency and rigor in protecting personal information. We'd like to thank the managers and staff who assisted us in this audit. The King County Executive and Sheriff plan to implement all 14 of our recommendations. This has been Laina Poon
and Megan Coe
from the King County Auditor's Office.